Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Dallaglio and welcome to the Evening Standard Rugby Podcast. I'm coming across a little bit of husky, so apologies for that. Had a rather long bank holiday weekend, as I'm sure you all did. No Steve Cording this weekend. He went to see the European Cup Final, obviously got himself slightly over-refreshed and has ended up in Devon. But he's very happy that Man United won the FA Cup Final. Nick Purewal will be joining us later to talk all things rugby from the Evening Standard. But first of all, I'm going to introduce a very, very special guest. Special team, special plays, special players. I think there's nothing more apt. His rugby CV is far too long for me to even discuss. He's probably the most decorated player I've ever seen in rugby. He played for several teams. He played rugby union at both bookends of his rugby league career. He's not only a rugby league legend, he's a rugby legend, and I would almost say a sporting legend. He has a statue at Wembley Stadium. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Welcome, Martin Chariots Offiah.
Gave my full moniker there.
Well, I didn't actually, literally. I mean, Julie, I wonder why Julie was up late last night, our producer, because the briefing notes are about 5 pages long. But Martin, it's great to see you, as always. I know you're here to talk about the Rugby League upcoming Betfred Challenge Cup Final at Wembley, where you've graced that field so many times. But before that, I just want to have a chat about your own career. People may not realise that you actually started playing rugby union, didn't you, at Rosslyn Park, and you finished your career playing rugby union, and obviously in the middle was probably the greatest ever rugby league career, certainly this side of the equator for sure.
Had some good times, but yeah, most people don't realise I am a rugby union player who played rugby league. I obviously had a little sabbatical with Bedford in '97 when Frank Warren bought Bedford, just after rugby union went professional, and all those exciting things that happened when Wigan played in the Middlesex Sevens against you guys in the final, and we played those cross code games against Bath as well. But yeah, my journey, like you, I'm a kid from London. Really.
Well, I was going to say, because normally the streets are paved in gold and you go from the north down to the south. And you did it the opposite way round. You were in Barnes, which, you couldn't get more sort of middle-class elitist than Barnes, and you went the other way and the streets were paved with gold for you. What was the catalyst for that? Was it someone that spotted you? Was it you? Were you just not feeling that you were getting enough ball in rugby union? Because it was a very different game. There was a lot of kicking, a lot of mud, and a lot of drop passes in rugby union.
I think in rugby per se, league or union, I think in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a lot of mud involved. But, I was a kid, I grew up in Hackney. I went to a primary school, loved football. But then my parents, who were very academic-minded, my dad was a barrister, my mum was a school teacher, sent me to a boarding school in East Anglia, just outside Ipswich.
God, they really. I went about 300 miles up north. They must have disliked you, and they just sent
exactly
you miles
what
away.
I thought. That's part of my story. I say they knew I loved football, and they sent me away to a boarding school which didn't have a football team. I thought they didn't love me.
But I suppose Hackney in those days was probably an area where, if without realising it, you could probably wander down the wrong track, and they just wanted to put you on the right path, basically.
Absolutely. out in rural Suffolk, just outside Ipswich, where I discovered the sport of rugby. Played my first senior rugby for Ipswich Rugby Club. Actually, wow. They've got my rugby league jersey up in the clubhouse at Ipswich. So yeah, that was my first taste of men's rugby. Left school, came to London. I did the opposite of what my son did. I broke my jaw in my last year at school, so I didn't play for England schools. I didn't pass my A-levels. He's a academic student. He's at Wellington, played for England 18s. He's got a professional contract at Bath. So I always remind him, it's not where you start, it's where you finish.
So I was very lucky. When I was young, I was trying to force my way into the England team, very difficult in those days. I got a phone call from Brian Smith, the Australian Rugby League coach, and he said, we've been watching you, Lawrence, and he said, we'd like to bring you to Bradford Northern. And I said to him, there appears to be a crackle on the line here. I said, you want me to move from London to Bradford? Now, obviously, the game was just going professional, so I had ambitions that way. But who persuaded you to take that? Did you get a phone call?
Yeah, basically a phone call. 87, I had those epic games in the Middlesex Sevens against Harlequins, when me and Andrew Harriman were dishing it out, and the whole folklore story about the first time that Swing Low was sung. I remember Colin Welland, when I met him in Australia, Colin Welland.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
he
very
wrote
well.
Chariots of Fire. He said, I was there that day, and I remember we were calling you Chariots and all that. And just basically, I think I'd outgrown Roslyn Park, been there for 2 years. I think I got a call from Roger Utley saying, did I want to come to Wasps? Because I think I played in London versus
Sliding doors moments, right?
It is, yeah.
You could have got, I mean, listen, you made the right decision. Rugby Union didn't really know what it was doing in the first 15, 20 years of professional rugby, if I'm honest with you. It took a long time to catch up. Now, I read stats. This is incredible, by the way, listeners. Martin Offiah scored 501 tries in 499 games.
I know, that is...
I mean, that is serious. I mean, does that include your international career as well?
Yeah, that includes what I played in Australia and everything, yeah. So, yeah, I always say that if you have a career when you're a winger and you score more tries than you play games, that's what I was focused on when I'm trying to do it. So I'm always grateful for the things that happened to me in my life. Without that, I have no
regrets,
no regrets, no envy of people. I think life is about legacy. It's about creating moments. You can earn as much money as you want. You can be as famous as you want. But at the end of the day, it's about legacy. It's about what you leave.
Talking of legacy, you played in the greatest Wigan team of all time, and that's saying something because Wigan have been successful for such a long period of time. You're now an ambassador for the club. You're going as the guest of honour, not of Wigan's, the guest of honour of Rugby League to the Betfred final at Wembley. I played against you very briefly in the Middlesex Sevens, and somehow we got to the final. My team was full of, myself, young kids, and I looked at Shaun Edwards, who was scratching his shorts down in the tunnel and just sort of, flying expletives in my face and spitting at me. And then I looked down the line, and there was Jason Robinson, there was yourself, there was Gary Connolly, there was Andy Farrell, there was Vigan. I mean, I was
Gary
thinking...
Conley that's the greatest team I've ever played in.
That's just the Sevens team, by the way.
And Scott Quinnell.
Yeah, I just thought we got no chance here, but somehow we ended up going 18 and up, and then obviously you revved into gear and you won. But the impact that people like Shaun and Andy and Faz have had on the game, Jason Robinson, you're not surprised by that because of the individuals that they were.
I knew it from that day. I knew it from before. Shaun Edwards helped me out. I think it was in '92. I signed for Wigan for 440,000. Had a fantastic year. I scored 10 tries in one game. I think I scored 5 tries in semi-final.
Oh, that's just greedy. Come on.
The pressure to imagine that Wigan had won the Challenge Cup 4 years on the trot, and then they sold Ellery Hanley, arguably the greatest player ever in the history of the game, for $250,000 and bought me for $500,000. That's when I say to people, that's what pressure is, and then had to go out and win it, and then had a bad sort of year as well. People want to get rid of me, and Shaun just said, he had these words to me. He said to me, Martin, if it's not broken, don't fix it, because I dislocated my shoulder. As you do as players, sometimes you have an injury, you go off track, you lose confidence. And I thought, as a player, he didn't need to do that to me. You know what I mean? But he came, because I think because it's a professional game, you want your good players to play well, because in big games, you're going to need them. You have that kind of sense to help players. But he helped me that day, and I remember that day when we were playing against you in the final. As you said, you were 18 points up. I think any other team maybe have crumbled, but that team, I remember Shaun saying to me...
Well, you guys, you can score in less than 10. It only takes 10 seconds to score a try.
Absolutely. And I remember Shaun, and he got us in a bit of a huddle, and he said, look, mate, we know we can't ruck, we know we can't scrum, we can't do anything, but we can tackle. We can tackle, we can score tries. And he said, defence wins games. And I'd never heard that expression. And I've said it in a couple of news articles. Before that, I'd never heard that reference before. And I think rugby league has brought so much and I've had these conversations with people like Eddie Jones, with Steve Borthwick, with lots of people, and I'm always trying to gain something from people when I'm in a room with great people such as yourself. And I remember that to this day, that he said defence wins games. And if you see the second half of that game, if you go and watch it on YouTube, you see what we did. We just tackled, and eventually we knew that you're going to drop the ball. And then you got Jason Roberts, you got Henry Paul, you got so many people, myself, just to ship the ball wide, Fuzz, and I
just thought it was an amazing to showcase the talents of you guys. Now, talking of legacy, it's 30 years since Wigan's famous victory and your famous length of the field try. I watched it. I'm sure nearly all of our listeners would have watched it. Everyone would. Been immortalised in a bronze. I don't know many rugby players or many people full stop that have a statue at Wembley Stadium, from the sport that it's not famous for.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that feel? It's incredible.
It's
really
amazing. That's why when people say, "Oh, you worried about this? You worried about that?" I said, "No, it's like legacy." I say, if I'd have played rugby union, they wouldn't be building any. No one's going to be building any statues of me. I don't care how many tries I scored. They ain't building no statues.
So when you go there this
of
weekend,
me outside Twickenham,
when you walk down Wembley Way, that's got to be special. I mean, you've done it so many times.
God,
You've
it's going to connect. I will literally be in tears. I tell you what, I think that and the time and the only other time I was in kind of a bit of a tearful mood was when I went to Italy to watch Tyler play in the under-18 Six Nations. And he scored a try, and it was a little kid started. It was only one voice started singing "Swing Low," and I had a little bit of a tear in my eye, just because of it. Just started to make me think of my whole journey, what I've come through, what you've been about how you get up every day, you work hard. Sometimes you have to pivot in life, and then. It's knowing your journey, as you say. I've heard you speak on many podcasts about your journey and what you've been through and what happened to your sister, and and your dad.
Oh, listen, I used to get very emotional.
You know what I mean? So there are certain moments, and I think when I walk out at Wembley to greet the players, that will be a moment, because I remember watching the Challenge Cup Final at boarding school. I remember seeing Shaun Edwards play there in 85, and I didn't leave school till I was 85. So I'd have just been in a little room watching it, thinking Shaun Edwards was older than me, not realising he's younger than me, but he was playing rugby league.
He's had a tough paper round, hasn't he?
He was playing rugby league at 16 years old. Can you believe it?
I know.
You know what I mean? Fantastic things. And you chart your journey together. And I said, it's about legacy, because we're not going to all be here forever. You know what I mean? But the fact that you can leave something behind, whether it be a statue, whether it be your tries, which still are cut up and go around on, I see kids now. Even my own son has never watched the whole game of me being...
Yours and mine are on Betamax. But so Martin, listen, you've got so many highlights, but let's be honest, the real highlight of your career was when you signed for Wasps, and you came. Did it have to have a W in the name? I laugh for Shaun. It's like Widnes, whatever. Wigan, Wasps, Wales for Shaun. You signed 1 year at the end, and listen, you played a few games. You showed Kenny Logan how to score tries. Yeah. And what are your memories of coming into that environment?
It was an honour just to come in. Obviously, I'm good friends with Shaun Edwards. He just started his coaching career. I think he had a few injuries and we sort of languishing a bit.
Tweegan Marler had played there.
Yeah, Tweegan Marler had played there. And so I just sort of came in, and I think I actually tried. I was 37. I had the career that I had, but then they still said, come and trial. So I said, yeah. I was excited about that.
Yeah, I know.
To come in and just trial. I think I played one game against Bath, and I did quite well. And then Melville just signed me to the end of the season. One of my highlights of my career, and I say to everyone, and it's on my Instagram, is when I came off the bench against Newcastle, scored the winner, and Kenny Logan kicked the conversion from the corner. Still to this day,
that is a collector's item.
Still to that day, that's one of the highlights of my career. And I'm thinking, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have had that. And that's another.
But also to have been brave enough to have done that, to have
back yourself. Always.
Listen, you're part of that. I think we probably won the title that year, so you were part of that kind of thing. Your son plays for Bath, so it's quite hard to he must have had hundreds of offers. I mean, Shaun used to come down with James, and he used to train his son, and I used to feel quite sorry for James, because
you don't remember the time that
we James. He missed the tackle. He said defence isn't the thing that goes around the garden. So.
Yeah, you remember that time when we played a touch rugby game for James's 7th birthday, and then some of the players and some of James's school friends, and I think James made a break, and then his own dad mowed him down.
Oh no, it was a classic. It was a classic.
But fast forward a few decades later, I'm at the same training ground
in Acton.
In Acton,
Avenue.
with my younger son Phoenix, who's playing football now, but I tried to get him to play rugby. He was a very good rugby player. But I took him into the clubhouse.
State of the art.
State of the art. And they've got all the old WAS, captains and internationals. And my name was up there, up in the internationals board. And I think that was all down to you, putting my name up there, because being a rugby league international, shouldn't have been up there. But I think and that meant a lot to me. And to my son as well, because he couldn't believe that his dad's name was up there. And the fact that I've got kids who, weren't alive when I played. It means nothing to them. They're only excited when people who they know talk about me.
I know.
I've said it many times, I think, to other people, when in other podcasts and other interviews and other Q&As, and that meant a lot to me, that I took my son there, and the fact that it didn't need to be there, because things like that mean a lot. You can play rugby, you can do this and do whatever, but when you meet people, who are of a certain calibre, and I just want to say thank you, because that did mean a lot to me.
No. Listen, as you said, we arrive in this world with nothing, we leave with nothing, but Martin Offiah, in between, you've given us everything. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Right, well, joining me now, after that star-studded special guest, is another star-studded special guest. It's, of course, Nick Purewal from the Evening Standard. Nick, how are you, sir? How was your bank holiday weekend? Was it work or play? Was it a bit of both?
Hi, Lawrence. I'm well, thanks. How are you? Yeah, it was a bit of both. It was. I was at the Champions Cup Final, so that was a great occasion. Great to see Jack Willis tearing it up.
Talk to me about that, because I was watching it, and obviously it's now talked about as probably one of the best ever, if not the best ever Champions Cup final, because obviously the drama, the momentum swings, probably the team that played the better rugby didn't end up winning in terms of their attack because they blew so many chances. The team that defended heroically, and as you say, Jack Willis for Toulouse, 41 tackles. The game went to extra time and was only decided at the very end. A record 6 stars for Toulouse. Probably a rather unfortunate record of losing a few finals now for Leinster. Just what were your thoughts on the game, the atmosphere, the occasion? It certainly delivered, didn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's a reminder that matches don't always have to be dominated by try after try, and it doesn't have to be we score, you score, and let's see how it shakes out, because I think Toulouse's defence was magnificent under the greatest of pressure. And in many different circumstances, Leinster could easily have come through and won that game. But that just speaks volumes about Toulouse's ability to dig in. And Jack Willis, as we said, some absolutely monster turnovers. He's just got better and better and better being in France, competing with an all-French back row, and not just competing, starting, dislodging France test players to start. And if that doesn't put you in the reckoning for England, then I don't know what does.
Right, let's park the Investec Champions Cup Final and let's look ahead to the Premiership playoffs. It's ended up being Northampton against Saracens on Friday night at Franklin's Gardens at the Cinch Stadium, and Bath v Sale at the Rec. A few people saw Sale winning so many matches at the back end of the season and forcing their way into the picture by beating Saracens. Really interesting matchups, probably not what we'd all thought. The number one seeded side, Northampton, play Saracens, who finished, fourth, and Bath finishing second after a Finn Russell-inspired season, play against Sale. A kind of clash of styles, really. I was lucky enough to be part of a team that won 6 Premiership titles. I think we could have won 7, but we lost a away semi-final in Sale. The statistics and the percentage wins for the teams away from home are quite damning. So can you see that changing? Can you see Saracens have lost already twice to Northampton this season. Can you see them upsetting the odds with everything that's happening?
Certainly it's something that they've built as a feature of their season. When things haven't gone well, they've been very impressed with how they've recovered, and they feel like they've rallied every time. And they certainly have, but this is the time when it's going to absolutely have to matter most, and Mark McCall's already said that. The times when they've atoned for defeats and mistakes and shortcomings earlier in the season, none of that matters now, because this is the one that matters most. They didn't want to finish 4th. They obviously wanted to finish in the top 2. They obviously wanted to have a home semi-final, and they don't have that, and they've got to go to Northampton and take on the team that finished top and have proven themselves the best team in the league so far this season. Obviously, it doesn't mean anything if you don't win the title, does it? We all know that. So Saracens are the masters of peaking at the right time, and they feel like they can do that one more time before this group of players breaks up with guys like Andy Farrell and the Vunipola brothers departing.
If I had to put your neck on the block, Nick, predict my 2 teams that are going to contest the Gallagher Premiership Final, please.
I think I'll go fairly route one and say Northampton, Bath. And I think that with everything that's gone on and everywhere we are, I think it will just be slightly beyond the other two teams to get across the line. Obviously, I would very much, in a professional capacity, like to see Saracens step into that final, you can never write them off, but I think it might just be slightly beyond them at this point.
Well, I'll be back next week when we'll know the Gallagher Premiership finalists, the lineup at Twickenham. Until then, thanks to our special guest Martin Chariots of Offiah, and of course to Nick Purewal from the Evening Standard and to Voxpod Studios for hosting us. Thanks for listening, guys, and see you next week.